Take Back Your Health Now, Episode 56.
You're listening to the Take Back Your Health Now podcast, the show that interviews the top doctors, athletes, trainers, and entrepreneurs to help you find the holy grail of health. Now here's your host, Dr. Dan Margolin.
Hi, this is Dr. Dan Margolin with another segment of Take Back Your Health Now, where we pull out all the stops in search of health's holy grail. We are so excited today to have Dr. Jesse Chappus. He's a chiropractor and a holistic health enthusiast. Dr. Chappus has always led an active lifestyle. He's an athlete who enjoys long-distance running and cycling. Dr. Chappus has run 6 marathons with a personal best time of 3 hours, 3 minutes, and 2 seconds, which qualified him to run the Boston Marathon in 2014. He is a firm believer in a proactive model of health and is a lifelong learner and continually researches the most current information on nutrition and natural health. And he also has one of the top health podcasts on iTunes. Dr. Chappus, how are you, sir?
Dan, it's so great to be on the show. Thank you so much for having me.
We are so excited to have you on. So, first of all, do me a favor. Just tell us a little bit about your podcast and where you're ranked and all that.
Yeah, so as you probably know, depending on what country you're in, you're going to rank differently. But at this point, we're consistently ranking in the top 10 in Canada, which we're in Ontario, so we're happy to see we're doing well in our own country. And at this point, we've been working our way down in the U.S. stats, and we're working our way to the top, I guess, the U.S. charts, and we're actually sticking around 25 or 30 in all of health in the U.S. star.
Amazing. Well, let's go back to the beginning. So what got you interested in health? Like, take us back to the start.
So for me, I've always really been interested in health as far back as I can remember, and that led me into taking kinesiology in university. And just speeding through here a little bit, that led to chiropractic school. I graduated as a chiropractor. I went into clinical practice for 5 years and had a lot of fun doing that. But during that time, my co-host on the podcast, we started the podcast, it's coming up on 3 years now. And basically, after we got that thing rolling and saw the momentum it picked up, this is while I was practicing, it got to the point where I really needed to decide if we were going to, I couldn't keep up the pace, basically, because as you know, doing a podcast, it's not just about jumping on the microphone once a week and recording. There's so much more to it, promoting the show and just editing the show, and there's so many different aspects. So
it's funny because people don't realize what goes on sort of behind the scenes, if you would.
Yeah. I think a lot of people jump into podcasting thinking they see it's hot right now and thinking that it's a good medium to jump in and really develop an audience quickly, which it is a great medium. We've done amazing and had a lot of fun, and it's grown like wildfire. But if you really want to have a successful show, it takes a ton of work, and we put in the work since the beginning. But basically, back to my story here, it got to the point when I had to decide where I was going to put my energy. I was just burning the candle at both ends. Wasn't good for my health, my well-being. So it's been just over a year now that I've actually been doing the podcast full time. So I retired from clinical practice.
Wow.
And yeah, this is our baby. And just within the last 2 months, Marnie, who had a physical space as well, a cooking studio where she taught healthy cooking classes in Toronto, she ended up retiring from that, and she's moved into the online world as well. So we're partners on the podcast, we're partners in life, and we're just really trying to get our health and wellness message out to the world.
Now, what a great story. Now, the health and wellness message, if I were to say, what is that message? Tell me what the message that you'd like to get out is.
Well, the message can really go as deep as you want to take it, but we like to keep it really simple for the general masses and just teach people things like eating organic, local, high quality food, having high quality water, finding exercise that you love to do and doing it consistently, getting enough sleep, finding a community where you can thrive in. So a great group of people who are going to challenge you and support you on your goals and your mission. And also just finding time to create balance within your own life, because we all know that life can get pretty out of hand at times. And sometimes when we're out there promoting the health and wellness message, we can let our own health and wellness slip. Like I was talking about when I was doing the podcast and practice at the same time. So
Right.
the other pillar that we like to talk about is self-care. So taking time for an Epsom salt bath here and there, going for a walk in nature, pouring an herbal tea, and just taking 20 minutes to get in a cozy chair and maybe look out the window, whatever that is for you, meditating. So
It's almost like take a moment to really reflect on, your life and actually like sit back and not be so stuck in it, but actually be able to step back, exteriorize from it a little bit and go, hey, this is pretty cool.
it's so important. And a lot of us that are type A, go, go, go mentality, we're achieving a lot. And I don't think we really stop and analyze what we've accomplished and the profound effect we're having in the world. So I think it's just important. And I know I've been in this trap myself where I'm just go, go, go from one thing to the next and checking that off the list and accomplishing this and that. And I stop sometimes and realize that I'm not stopping enough to really appreciate the journey and all the things that I'm accomplishing along the way.
I got to tell you, I just spoke to a friend of mine who I haven't had a chance to speak to in a while, and he'd spoken to other friends of mine that I also haven't spoken to probably in a couple of years. These are people that I grew up with. One of them had a brain tumor and had surgery. The other had a heart attack, and the other one looks like might be going through a divorce or something like that. And I thought, oh my God, you don't. I know them as kids, and to now hear later on, I'm in my 50s, so they're also around that age, to be going through all these things, and knock on wood, I have my health and all that stuff, but it does, like what you're saying is so true, to stop, and you get so caught up in the day-to-day podcast and practice and consulting company and stuff, to actually stop for a second and go and sort of count your blessings, if you would, right?
Yeah, and I think that to really live a healthy lifestyle, that is part of it. So Marnie and I have something, we've actually done a couple podcasts on this called the 6 Pillars of Health. And that overview I gave you was a quick bird's eye view of that. So I really think that if you want to live a life where you're energized, feeling good, you're happy, you really need to look at your self-care and look at what you're doing to create that balance within your day-to-day life.
Now, Doc, what was the moment when you recognized this? I mean, you're a long distance runner or cyclist. You do, I mean, clearly, like, you can put out some energy. But when was the point that you yourself said, you know what, there is this whole reflective aspect to it?
I would say I don't have it totally figured out. Like, there's times in my life right now where I'm still getting caught up in the day-to-day grind, and I look and say, like, I need to plan. Even sometimes you might need to put it in the calendar and really set that time aside, so you're taking a couple hours and going for that walk out in nature, or whatever that might be. Reading a good book that's unrelated to, for me, health and wellness and business, which are my real passions, and that's my career now. So I'm always drawn to those things. So setting aside time maybe for me to read some fiction or do something that's not so business focused is even Netflix, I guess, could be used in a healthy way like that. If you actually plan for it and don't get sucked in and just kind of keep letting one show go into the next and just getting caught in that trap. But if you're setting aside time and realizing that's your balance, and you're watching quality documentaries on there, or shows that are thought provoking, then that could be a good thing. But for me, I think when I really hit that wall and realized that I didn't have the balance, it was when the podcast was building up, and maybe 6 months before I actually stepped away from clinical practice and did the podcast full time. So luckily, now that this is my career, I do have more balance in my life, and it's just, sometimes it takes pushing and hitting that wall to realize that you're there. And for me, I think it was just trying to juggle practice and the podcast.
I mean, let me ask you the other part of it. How were you juggling just staying in that kind of shape to be able to run a marathon and do all those kind of things? I mean, that's no joke either, right? You're putting in some mileage. Were you doing it around the same time, or?
Well, the marathon running, that was that was before. So that like during probably the time of the podcast, I might have run a half marathon or done some smaller events and stuff like that.
Okay.
But the hardcore marathon running, when I was doing that and actually trying to be competitive, at least with my own self against my old best times,
Yeah.
that was a time before the podcast. So yeah, I don't even think it would be possible for me to try and take on, because that is basically a part-time job when you're training quote unquote the right way for a marathon. If you're really trying to, for me, like qualify for the Boston Marathon and
Sure.
really get your time down there. But yeah, there was weeks where during the middle of that training, I was running every day, and some of my lighter runs would have been like just 10K runs as base runs and stuff like that. So those, when you include getting changed and showering afterwards and fueling yourself properly before and after and start putting all that together, yeah, it really, training for some of these events can be having a part-time job.
Oh, I can't imagine. I actually ran a half marathon with my sister, my sister's a big runner, right? So I kept up with her the first 10 miles, and we were talking and joking around, and I was so excited. And then she goes, well, Dan, I got to go. And she just blew past me as I sort of hobbled in towards the end of it. But there's definitely there's a difference between just trying to limb through a half marathon and really doing it the way you did it. So very well done. What, from your show, right? You've obviously you've interviewed a lot of people. What have you learned, and including like I guess some of the high performers that have been on your health podcast? What have you learned? How has that changed your viewpoint, or has it?
Well, the first thing that pops out is the importance of sleep. We've had a lot of sleep experts on the show, and for me, I've always gravitated towards being one of those people that, like, after everybody's starting to go to bed and the night is just young, I can like jump on my computer and put in a few hours of work. I'm naturally drawn to that, and I've done that for like a good portion of my life. And not that I didn't know that I was pushing the boundaries by doing that, but just repetitively having these guests on and hearing time and time again the importance of setting a bedtime, setting a time when you're getting up in the morning, and doing these things not just during the week, but also on the weekends. So really setting that circadian rhythm and doing this consistently over time, that to me was pretty profound when I started actually doing that. And I'm still, again, not perfect. I'm always caveat throwing that out there where I'm still working on a lot of this stuff myself. Like sometimes you'll be something unexpected might happen and you're trying to do something for the podcast or for work, and you have to put in a late night here and there, or different things happen, life happens, but
Sure.
Generally I'm trying to maintain better sleep hygiene.
And what, as far as the show, do you get into like nutrition? Like, what would you say the majority of the people you have on the show, or the majority focus? Is it more athletics? Is it more nutrition? Where would you say it goes?
I would say that if I had to boil it down, it would be nutrition. We usually get into that with everybody. Mm-hmm. But the beautiful thing about our show is that we've always brought in the full range of guests. So we're always looking to expand the type of guests we bring on the show, anything that'll fit into health and wellness. So we've had people come on and talk about finances, yoga, meditation, just everything comes up. All the different things in the pillars. We're talking about all that stuff week in, week out. And what we also try and do is within those subtopics is bring in guests that have different perspectives. So as you know, being in the health world, there isn't a way to really distill things down and have one clear path. And we realized this early on. And what we've done is we've tried to bring all the different perspectives on. So even if we don't totally agree with the guests coming on, but we know they're a professional in a certain area and they're going to bring, there's always going to be things we agree with and disagree with. We want to make sure we're not just catering to what we're doing in our health and wellness routine, if that makes sense. So we're not trying.
It's so funny you're saying that, because true, I've interviewed many people on nutrition, and you get people that are experts and that legitimately believe what they're saying and know what they're saying, and can even document studies, and those studies are the opposite of what the guests you had on the week before said. And it's just interesting, right? What do you say to that?
Yeah, that's what we do. We're a platform where every week we're trying to do a ton of research and pull out those differences with the guests. And we always tell the audience, we're just here to facilitate that discussion and bring it all to the table. And what your job is at that point is to try and test these different things on yourself and get proper lab work done while you're trying different things and seeing what your energy levels are. And there's no clear path. Everybody is different. That's another important point where we're not all the same. We're all going to have things that work better for one another. And along the health journey, things change too. Like in the beginning, when we started the podcast, I forget exactly if I was eating 100% plant-based or definitely heavily focused on plant-based. And now my diet's done basically a 180 and I'm eating more of a paleo diet. So
Really?
yeah, so the thing is, I realize that I'm going to constantly keep evolving too throughout the next however many years I'm here, and I always say as a caveat that, this is just what I'm doing now, and I'm going to continue to bring in the best information into my own knowledge base and try different things and evolve as I see what works best.
What I love about talking to you is that viewpoint, right? That you are evolving and stuff. You meet so many people, which is probably the reason you're doing the podcast too. You're searching and you're looking for answers as well. Where in life, sometimes you meet so many people that are pretty fixated on their beliefs and they've maybe had them for 100 years and there's no way in hell you're going to change those. And to me, those are not the people that are that interesting. I'm more interested in people that are trying to grow. They're trying to actually blossom. They're trying to figure out their direction and the best way for other people as well.
Yeah, always experimenting and always curious to learn more and humble enough just to say that this is just what I know now and that things are going to continue to change.
I love it. And so if I were to say for you, just what does holistic health look like to you? So you say you're on a paleo diet. Go into that. Like, what did you have for dinner last night? What are you eating? What are you drinking? What's your workout routine like right now?
Well, I try a lot of different things in the diet realm from time to time, but if you kind of zoomed out a little bit and looked at the last 6 months and what I'm eating, it's really simple. Marnie and we eat at home almost every night, and a typical dinner plate would look like a piece of wild-caught salmon, some asparagus, maybe a little bit of sweet potato, just some baked sweet potato, and maybe like a root soup that's like a blended soup or something like that. And like the next day we might just sub in a different green. We'd have like a baby kale salad instead of the asparagus. We might sub in like some high quality chicken. Like what we do when we're consuming meat, I want to throw that out there for sure, is the fact that we only eat the highest quality. So if it's chicken, it's got to be organic. If it's fish, we're only buying wild caught. And if we get in, when we do eat the red meats, it's grass-fed stuff and just the highest quality. Because as you know, a lot of that stuff can get pretty contaminated being higher up the food chain, and just the way that animals are treated. And yeah, it's not as healthy. We're all about putting the best quality fuel in our bodies, and we prioritize that day in, day out. And we always have, always will.
Well, what's your viewpoint? Do you ever cheat and have like sugars or chocolate or anything like that? I mean, is that ever there, or you pretty much totally have eliminated that?
Well, I guess it depends. Like cheating would probably look a little bit different from person to person. For me, like chocolate is totally fair game, and I eat a decent amount of chocolate, but we're getting it from the farmer's market. We're getting organic. We're getting, the best quality stuff that's sweetened with like coconut sugar versus some kind of refined sugar. Mm-hmm. And any of our treats, like whatever we'd get into, we've just upgraded them in a way where it's not actually cheating, but we're still having those delicious sweets or whatever that might be, salty snacks or whatever it is.
Sure. Well, you said something interesting. You said you went from a completely plant-based to more of a paleo diet. Why did you do that? What had you go in that direction?
Well, just I guess the research I was doing at the time led me to believe that at one point it was that a raw food vegan diet was the end all be all. And that's kind of the diet I was striving for when I really started digging into YouTube and started following a lot of the quote unquote gurus in the health and wellness space. This is years and years ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just kind of, at one point, I was eating a lot of raw foods, a lot of juices, smoothies. And I don't know if I was ever like vegan long term, but I've definitely had a lot of vegan days. I was eating vegetarian for a long time. And one of the biggest things that probably had an impact on my diet, at least like the evolution in the last few years, has been the podcast. And just hearing week after week, there has been so many guests on the show that talk about how they've went all the way into the plant-based diet, vegan diet, whatever you want to call it. And over time, that diet starts to fail them. And just talking about bringing back some of these foods and like bone broth and high quality eggs and animal protein and just how it's like a broken record. We hear that story all the time on the podcast. So it just got me further and further looking into the research on that and experimenting and just in the end, just feeling better eating that way.
Wow, that's great. And how, when you are eating that way, you feel you have more energy than you were when you were in your previously just plant-based?
Yeah, I think I just feel, greater sense of energy, well-being, and I just feel more satiated. I just feel better. And again, looking at the research I've looked at, it just feels more complete and sustainable long-term for me.
Just, did you grow up in an environment where your family was always like this? Is that fair to say, or is this something that you really took in terms of your direction?
Yeah, there was a phase when I was probably in my teens where my dad started getting more and more into reading and applying a lot of this stuff. And I think that having that in the household was an influence for me early on. And yeah, just started at that point probably taking things out of my diet like pop and chips and a lot of the basic first steps and just having those seeds planted. And when I really like kicked things to the next level was when I was in chiropractic school and I started going online and again finding these different gurus mostly in the plant-based world that were just talking about how good you could feel and how radiant your health could be when you're eating this way, which for them was raw vegan. And again, that just opened the door to me exploring more and more and doing, this podcast and writing blogs and collaborating with different people, doing a lot of interviews on other shows. I've just really become immersed in the world and just, I would say the seeds were probably planted in my teens.
What was the most like game-changing interview you ever did? I don't know if that's a fair question, but what would you say the most like, oh my God, I never expected that interview was?
Well, when you say that, the first interview that comes to mind that's like really, I got off the interview and I was like, wow, that felt really good. And this is really going to help a lot of people was Sean Croxton. And I'm not sure if you know who he is, but
No, I don't.
he's got a podcast now called The Sessions. And he had one of the early health and wellness podcasts called Underground Wellness. So he's been in this game a long time, doing interviews, talking to all the best of the best in the health and wellness space. And it was probably about 8 months ago that Marnie and I interviewed him. And again, just his passion, his no BS attitude, and just his authenticity. He was just so authentic behind the mic and just so open to sharing his message and his story.
Yeah.
And that one to me just, again, felt really awesome coming off that one.
It's funny when you get off an interview like that, you do change a little bit. You definitely feel different. It certainly makes what you're doing worthwhile. I mean, it is, aside from the finance, all that, there's another type of pay, which is in the people that you get to talk to and the things you learn.
Yeah, big time. It's just been awesome. And I'm sure you feel the same way, having a show where you get to connect with so many amazing people and just form relationships that continue after the podcast. And it's just
great.
awesome.
It is. Doctor, let me ask you one thing. I always ask my guests, sir, if I were to ask what the holy grail of health is to them, what would that be? So I'm going to pose that question to you. What would you consider to be the holy grail of health?
Wow, that's such a tough question. But for me, like all the different pillars I talked about before, you can't really live a healthy life unless you are putting effort into each one. But the one I want to emphasize is sleep. And this one, it's just so funny because it's so easy to implement. It's free. And for whatever reason, there's just so much going on, I guess, in the 21st century that sometimes it can be hard to turn it off and just shut everything down and get to bed at a good time. I feel for people. And again, I still have to work at that. But for me, if you really want to have more energy and you really want to turn your health around, just start going to bed earlier, have a consistent bedtime, don't have electronics on and staring into those screens like for at least a couple hours before bed. I mean, we could take this really far, and there's different ways of optimizing if you do have to look at a screen by wearing orange glasses, or there's different apps you can get on your computer, your phone to optimize. But just optimize your sleep space, start embracing sleep, and it's just going to have such a profound effect on everything in your health and wellness routine.
Doctor, what is the proper amount of time you think that somebody should have? Let's say somebody, I guess it would vary a little bit with age. Somebody much younger would need more, but somebody in their mid-40s, let's say, what would be the proper amount of time you think?
It's definitely going to vary depending on the person and where they're at in their life and how much stress they have going on in their life and so many different factors. But I would start with 8 hours. I think that's it's a very stereotypical answer, but that's a good starting point. Some people might be able to get away with a little bit less. Some people might need 9, but 8 hours is a good test. Really run that for a couple weeks and just see how good you feel. And then you can kind of tinker it from there.
It's going to be a silly question, but you think people can oversleep where there's some people that are sleeping just too many hours, or is that pretty rare?
I would think it'd be pretty rare. I'm sure it's possible. And I think it might have been Ariana Huffington on our podcast saying that there was maybe even a couple different types of people that could oversleep. And I think depression was one. So somebody's suffering from depression, they might have to watch that.
Gotcha. Dr. Jess Chappus, how would people that want to learn about your podcast, want to find out more about you, how would they get in touch with you?
Best thing to do is you're already listening to a podcast now. Just go into whatever app you're listening on, search for the Ultimate Health Podcast, or go to ultimatehhealthpodcast.com and just download our latest show and check us out. If you've enjoyed this, I'm sure you're going to love our show.
Awesome. Dr. Jess Chappus, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. This has been great.
This episode is sponsored by New Jersey Foot and Ankle Center in Oradell, New Jersey. Remember, when you have a foot problem, you've got a foot doctor in the family. Weekend and evening appointments are available. Call us at 201-261-9445. Once again, that's 201-261-9445. Thanks for listening. Check out the show notes over at drdanspeaks.com. If you're loving the show, head over to iTunes and leave us a review, and we'll catch you next time.